We're gathered here to celebrate 10 years, a full decade of fantastic innovation and growth at Dentally. So I'm Ben, and I'm joined here by the founders of Dentally, so Nick Davies and James Harker. We wanted to spend a bit of time reflecting on the journey that these guys have been on in the last 10 years and just talking a little bit about where we're going in the future. So let's start by asking you guys must have had an initial vision for Dentally. Talk us through what that was and how you feel you've aligned with that over the years. Has it changed at all?
Yeah, sure. So James and I met at university. We were both on the same course at Imperial in London, doing biomedical engineering, actually. So a little bit, somewhat tenuously linked to the dental industry, but not really. And as we were both, working our way through university, we were looking at, other additional ways that we could earn a little bit more money. As most students, especially students that are in South Kensington, it's a rather expensive place to be with not a huge amount of money. So to that end, we started doing some, IT support, because both James and I were reasonably techie. So we started doing some IT support for small businesses, including, on that journey, the introduction to the dental industry was through James's family. And we started doing some small business IT support, including dental practices. So,
yeah, and from there, I think we sort of realised that we could earn a bit more money by not doing IT support, and instead just do some websites and progress from websites to e-commerce. And thought, how hard can it be to build a web app? I'd worked in my mum and dad's dental practice and had used Exact, and felt Exact hadn't changed enough as much as it should have during the sort of the 5 or so years that I'd be using it, and really thought, well, let's give it a go. How hard can it be to
famous last words?
Incredibly naively thought, how hard can this be to write a web app? This will take sort of six to 8 weeks maybe, and then we can go and do something else as we'd progressed previously. But yeah, that was sort of the journey, was just how do we make something cloud-based that's incredibly simple, intuitive, easy to use, and really sort of liberates clinicians from the computer and allows them to spend more time with their patients. That was probably the initial sort of vision, I think we had.
It's probably worth pointing out that from James obviously started looking at, he looks after the tech, and and I looked after more of the business management side of things, as we founded.
I do the
Dentally.
work, you do the speaking. Is that
exactly? But at the same time, that six to 8 week estimate that you were talking about originally, it's every new feature is still 6 to 8 weeks estimate from James, and we're still only just scratching the surface 10 years on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if you've never met these two in person, one of the key themes, it seems, of their relationship is basically giving each other a hard time. So I think they've spent some of the last 10 years writing software, and most of it giving each other a hard time. So, but all in good fun, I'm sure.
So as we continued that journey, and going back to, I think, your question, Ben, we started doing that IT support, transitioned, as James said, into building the beginnings of what turned into Dentally way back in 2012, 2013. And then we launched properly to our, first customer, right, around 2014, so 10 years ago, hence why, we're celebrating our 10th birthday. And I think it was a very, very interesting journey. So we made a few decisions super early on. So day one, our very, very first practice we went live with was an NHS practice, because we felt that it was, in the UK, it's going to be important to support the NHS. And the way that we kind of, I think, as James said, somewhat naively thought that building software was a little bit easier than it turned out. So when we went live with that very first customer, we actually spent 2 weeks on site with them, just working out all the, some of the little bits. It's like, so
fixing bugs live and
building
exactly that. So
building features,
I would be working with the reception team for a period of time, and they would ask a question, how do you do such and such? And I'm like, That's a very good idea. That's a very good question. And, James would be in the practice staff room busy there, and we would be able to respond and, modify Dentally a little bit to get some of that, make some of those tweaks there and then whilst we're in the practice. And I think one of the things that we've always tried to do since then, obviously, is to maintain that customer-centric touch.
Yeah.
It does become a little bit more difficult as you get more and more customers. When you've only got one, you can really give them a lot of attention. But we really, one of our key focuses, I think, for Dentally has always been making sure that we're doing the right things for our customers, making it easy for our customers. And a little bit more recently on the journey, which we'll talk about in a second, making lives easier for our customers, so for patients as well, as we start to talk, get into that space.
Yeah. So 10 years is a long time. There must have been some real landmark moments along the way, some really quite exciting moments as Dentally rose to become the leading cloud product in the UK PMS space. Tell us about some of those moments.
Yeah, definitely. I think Nick's already touched on one, which is our first customer, which is the NHS practice.
In Wales.
Yeah, in Wales, in Barry, in Wales, that we spent two weeks at. And as Nick said, we chose an NHS practice to start with because NHS has sort of been the backbone of dentistry in the UK for a number of years, and it was inconceivable for us to really launch a PMS without that baked into the heart of it.
Of course.
So customer number one going live, that was a pretty big moment. They probably at the time didn't quite really appreciate how big a moment it was. I think some other moments then is probably that second customer, which is again another NHS practice we spent 2 weeks in, and then just slowly but surely adding customers over the years.
I think as we started started growing out, I think one of the other big steps for us was when we got our first multi-site customer, which was just two practices that were a few miles apart from each other. I think it was one of those pivotal moments where we really started to understand the value that cloud can bring, because you're not tied to having an individual database on a server within the practice. So, we started very, very early on. We started in that multi-site journey, which was, I think, really quite impactful for us. And then, going through, I think we then started expanding that offering into, in England and Wales NHS to begin with, and then in around 2018 we added Scotland in there, and in 21 we added Northern Ireland. So, we're making sure we can support all of the regions here in the UK. In addition to that, I think some of the other key moments is the point at which we started offering Dentally Portal and getting into the patient space as well. It's been I think, as anyone in the dental industry will know now, being patient-centric is becoming increasingly more important. Back in the day when you could create a dental practice, put a brass sign on the door and patients would come, it's now a significantly more competitive landscape, and making sure that we've got the right tools to allow our dentists to facilitate patients, the patient journey, make it easy for them. That was another big moment. And the other one that I really want to kind of call out is obviously halfway through that last 10 years, we had the small little thing called COVID that hit, and everyone's probably really bored of talking about it now. But I think it was a really interesting time for dentistry, because dentistry shut down, started, and one of the things that I'm really proud that we managed to do is, obviously it was with dentistry shutting down pretty much overnight, it led to potentially quite a bit of financial hardship for a lot of the certainly the private practices that didn't have the continuation of the NHS funding. And so really early on, April 2020, just after we were all sitting at home not doing much, James and the tech team got together and started thinking about producing some features in terms of how we can quickly react and help our practices that were potentially in pain. And one of the things we managed to do is launch the ability to quickly take payments remotely. So practices could bulk send a text messages to patients that still owed them a little bit of money. And I think what was amazing is the first practice that we launched that to sent out a bulk text message, and they recovered £15,000 of debt within that first week. And a £15,000 worth of injection of cash at the beginning of COVID was very welcome for practices.
Yeah, I think for me, not long after that was when we joined the Henry Schein team and obviously started working together. So I think that was definitely a pivotal moment in our journey. Really, we were a very small team, accomplishing a lot, and the sort of the confidence and reassurance and backing that Schein gave us has allowed us to really accelerate that journey, and allowed us to combine the sort of simplicity that we started with, making dental software easy to use and intuitive for users, with the sort of customer outcomes that Schein is known for. So really making sure we can deliver value for our customers, both financially and in terms of sort of patients and what they need.
Sure. Yeah, and I think if we look at more, some of the big landmarks that we've had more recently, in the, since we've been part of the Henry Schein ecosystem, definitely. So we're 2.5 years now launched into Australia, and earlier this year, on our 10th year, we've launched into Canada as well. So, it's really fantastic for us to see the impact that Dentally can have broaden. Spreading out across some of the other English-speaking countries, and I think we're now just starting to scratch the surface of really, some of the work and the benefit that we can bring from being in all of those regions back to the UK as well.
For sure. So, over the last 10 years, the dental industry has been through some pretty material changes. Tell us about how you've responded to those changes, or perhaps how Dentally has responded to those changes, and the role that Dentally has played within that change.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on one or two of them a little bit, but to dive in, I think for me in the UK, there've been 2 or 3 big changes. We're only 10 years into this industry, and yet we've still seen some big swings. One is, we all know that the majority of patients in this country are seen under the NHS, and but the funding for the NHS and the NHS model has gone. It is being stressed at the moment. I think the cost of running a dental practice has increased over the last 2 to 3 years in particular, and I think that's led to a lot more stresses and strains on NHS practices. So, one of the key areas that we've definitely doubled down on our focus over the last 3 years or so has been on ensuring that Dentally and the practices that use Dentally are able to get the best out of their business. At the end of the day, dental practices are businesses, and we want to leverage that and allow our dental practices with Dentally Elevate, our customer success program, to get the best out of their businesses and support those practices, maximise what they can do on the NHS, making sure they're hitting their targets and maximising everything they can do there. In addition to that, maximise their growth that they get from mixed practices or private practices that they get on their private dentistry as well. And one of the things that I think we're particularly proud of that Dentally is able to deliver significant, 30 to 40% private revenue growth by automations and other software-driven aspect in some of the practices that we're working with.
Yeah, certainly, I think the biggest change I've seen is, as Nick sort of touched on there, is just the ability for practices to attract and retain staff has become increasingly harder, where previously the team members at a dental practice would stick around for a decade plus. Now they are sticking around for far, far shorter than that. And so actually getting upskilled on the business of dentistry and being able to get familiar with the software and manage patients appropriately is becoming challenging. So we've launched a series of tools to help eliminate as much of the repetitive admin work from sort of the front desk as possible, whether this is getting patients to fill in forms before their appointments or whilst they're at reception if they're not able to do it before, to the things Nick talked about is in automating payment collections and things like that to really free up the people working within a practice so that they can spend the time focusing on patients really.
Yeah. And I think that's the final major change that I think we've seen is that patient aspect. I think dental practices now really need to focus on their patients and it's the patients or the consumer experience now that people expect is far more digital. It's people are more conscientious, they do more research. Dr. Google is now consulted far more than it used to be. For better or worse, so I think from a dental practice perspective, providing that patient experience, that stellar patient experience, is really important. Whether that's a digital patient experience in terms of attracting new patients, getting patients to fill out their forms, and or all of that stuff before they arrive at the practice to make it easier for them. Let's be honest, people don't like to go to the dentist. Or most people don't like to go to the dentist, but it's a necessity. So facilitating that, making it easy, making it a better experience, and like James said, allowing the software to take away some of that repetitive task. And humans are such an important touch point for patients, and allowing the humans to do the really important human to human interaction. Greeting patients, spending more time with them, and just making them feel good about it reflects really well on the practice. And then we massively see that in terms of, for example, our review platforms that we've got on Dentally, where you get great patient reviews, which in turn then brings in more new patients. So it's
right, sure.
That's definitely become a lot more important over the last few years.
So every journey has its challenges, particularly as a small business. Tell us about some of the big challenges you faced along the way and how you overcame them.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that James has had is having to deal with me,
and
vice versa.
You got in ahead of him on that.
So don't need me for this anymore.
But I think some of the other challenges, I think you've hit the nail on the head in being a small business, and again, something that a lot of dental practices will relate to is. You can run the business from month to month, and there's a particular point in time, in Dentaly's journey where we were growing really, really quickly, which is fantastic. But growth is expensive, and we very, very cash constrained each month. And when we had our VAT quarter and payroll and all that other kind of stuff coming together in one go, we always had to really be laser focused on the bank balance at the end of each quarter, which was. It really helps focus the mind, and I think it's a really important aspect of growing a small business. And as we've grown a little bit more, your stresses and your focus change somewhat. So maybe a little bit less cash at the end of the month as you get to be a little bit more of a mature business, and now it becomes on how we're growing. And making sure that we're doing right by a much larger number of customers. So, we always want to make sure we're still achieving that customer goal.
Yeah, it's always a very big challenge, isn't it, to make sure that you don't overlook small niggling problems that affect many customers in favour of big ones.
Yeah, I think for me the probably the biggest challenge we've had, which is probably same one we had on day one, is just the diversity amongst dental practices. I don't think I've walked into two dental practices yet that operate the same way. So going back to very naively, this won't take as long to do. You can go to two what from the outside look like quite similar practices, but both have completely different ways of working, completely different goals they're trying to achieve, and what will be critically important to one customer that won't even register for another customer. So being able to pull all that together and figure out what do we think is important and the direction we should go, I think that's one of the biggest challenges to support all the different ways of working to make sure each customer can be as successful as they possibly can be.
Yeah,
the flip side of that is one of the nice things about this industry is a diversity, in how people approach the way of doing dentistry. Whether that's NHS or private, or even within each of the NHS practices, it makes it an interesting challenge. It's one of the things that makes the industry so compelling.
For sure. So we live in a world that has changed a lot over the last 10 years, but if anything, I think the pace of change is accelerating. We have emerging technology, and particularly AI. As we look to the future, tell us what you see changing and how you see Dentally responding to those changes.
Yeah, I could probably start with this one. So for me, some of the big stuff that I'm excited about is we've recently launched Dentally Vision, which is online digital radiography, and I think that's gonna allow clinicians to completely put their entire workflow in the cloud. But not just that, we're actually launching AI on top of that. So this is artificial intelligence that allows you to do computer-assisted diagnosis. I don't think AI is going to come in and replace clinicians or users within the practice. I think that's sort of a folly to think that. But certainly being able to give practitioners sort of a second opinion or another set of eyes to help diagnose an X-ray in this particular case, I think is going to be quite a big trend that we see. And I think that AI theme will carry out through the rest of the dental practice. You won't necessarily have AI replacing the work that humans do, because I think they'll still be an integral part of the system, but it'll certainly liberate people to spend more time with their patients by just getting on top of the repetitive tasks and all the bits that you have to sort of remember to do in a dental practice. I think that's where we'll see.
I think with the imaging AI stuff that we've just launched, it's not just providing just a little bit of assistance to the clinician as well. I think it's also leaning into that patient education. So I think, as we talked about Dr. Google earlier, and I think patients now are more and more being judicious about where they're spending their money in healthcare and why do I need to, do I not need to. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, so when there's a lot of people where they're just having a little bit of a second thought about whether or not they want to have that dental treatment now, or can they postpone it. And I think this one of the really exciting things about Dentally Vision AI is it really kind of can help clinicians tell the story to a patient, like highlight that area and have that better conversation and show patients graphically with color and all these other kind of things, that actually that little bit of decay is getting rather close to getting through your enamel, and then it becomes a significantly more expensive or more painful treatment to go and have a root canal or an extraction when you could just have the filling now, and just really helping patients understand why they should do certain treatments and so on and so forth. Outside of the AI, but in the patient education space, we're also seeing significant improvements in some of the tools, such as chairside that's integrated with Dentally, that give patients really compelling, nice narrative as to what certain treatments mean. Make sure that we're really getting out ahead of informed consent. As well, so patients really understand what they're doing, why the treatment's necessary, what the treatment entails, and what the risks are, without it, bamboozling them and then no longer being necessarily fully informed.
Sure. What messages would you guys like to say to your customers?
I think for me, we talked a lot about the journey we've been on for the last 10 years, and I think the classic adage in software development is 80% of your development potential is always in front of you. And so I think even though we're 10 years in, I still feel that we're only just starting to scratch the surface in terms of the value that Dentally can provide to a practice. So I think we wouldn't be here now. We wouldn't have managed to get through this last 10 years without the amazing support of our customers, the feedback that we get, making sure we love the feedback, because it's the way that we can make sure that we are building the right thing. James and I and the team might have some good ideas, but they're not good ideas unless they really help our customers. So the feedback is fantastic. So I really want to thank the users that have been with us along that journey, even if they've only been on Dentally relatively recently. Each and every one of them, the feedback that we get is fantastic.
Yeah, I'd echo that and say massive thank you to all of our users. They've been exceptionally patient with me, particularly in the development team, as we maybe haven't got things right first time, but certainly the feedback they've given us and continue to give us is what really helps drive the product forward. So we're always happy to speak to users when they've got both good and bad things to say about the product, because it's really is what made Dentally what it is today, and will continue to help us improve the product as we go into the future.
And and obviously as part of it, especially as we've grown over the last 4 or 5 years, we wouldn't be able to do any of this without our team. Without the team that are building, developing, supporting, selling, and marketing Dentally. So we, from James and I's perspective, we'd obviously really want to call out our team as well for making the last 10 years successful, and hopefully the future 10 years. And I think we definitely saw some of this from the user and a team perspective in the celebrations that we had at the dentistry show this year.
Yes.
Which was
Lots of cake.
Lots of cake. So you can have your cake and eat it. No, but lots of cake, which was fantastic to see. And I think the dentistry show this year was such an overwhelming, huge experience for Dentally. It was by far the biggest show we've ever had. We say that at a lot of shows, but it still was by far the biggest show we've ever had, and it was an absolutely fantastic celebration. And I think as we look forward, we've talked. Just to go back to what I said a second ago, which is we've got so many more exciting things that can really help dental practices and really make sure that we are touching on a few things. There's so many things that are repetitive that we need to automate with software. Computers are very good at doing the same thing over and over again. They don't complain, they don't get bored. We want to do more of that, allow the dental team to focus more on that patient care.
Very good. Thank you, guys. So it's been a privilege for me to be part of your journey and to work with you through part of the last 10 years. And I know how passionate you both are about the product, about dentistry, about patient care, and I really look forward to working with you for the next 10 years as we make Dentally everything it can be. So thank you very much.
Great.
And thanks for
Ben.
listening to us.